Claire, Kris, I don't know why I'm whispering, but I think we're live. Say hello to everyone.
Hi there. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Max. Hi, everyone.
We've just had a great fun in our green room. Sometimes I wish that people could participate in our green room, because it's great when you don't know people. You go live with them, and it's great to meet people face to face. Of course, it is great to meet people face to face in the proper world, but actually with Zoom, you can break down barriers. You can find out people's personalities really quickly. And everyone, we've got some great personalities here with Claire and Kris. So we've got a really interesting broadcast today, and it's all about CPI. Kris, do you want to just tell everyone who CPI is, and then what I'll do is, if it's okay, especially for those on the podcast, I just want to read out a bit more defined information so they can really get a feel for yourself, for Claire and CPI. But Kris, can you just start us off? Who are CPI, please?
So CPI stands for the Centre for Process Innovation. And what are we? We're an organisation that was founded in 2004 by the remnants of ICI up in the Northeast. And it was spearheaded by the sort of regional development agency. And it was to create an innovation centre to support the process industries. And all these words don't mean much to most people, but innovation in the terms of technical development is the bit that you have to do to get it out of a test tube to get it into the marketplace. It's that whole stage. It's about scale up. It's about using a range of different engineers and scientists and project managers and technical professionals to combine their knowledge to get that widget or piece of technology from very, very small scale in the lab to either tons of scale or thousands of units or whatever it is that you get it out into the marketplace. Yeah. And if you're an SME on that journey, typically finding capital to actually do this stuff is really difficult. Yep. Building your own labs is really expensive. Recruiting a team of a dozen or more engineers and scientists takes years. But what you're able to do with organisations like CPI, which are known as a research and technology organisation, an RTO, and we're a member of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult in the UK. So there are many of organisations like CPI in the UK. As you come in, knock on the door, talk to us, explain what your problems and challenges are, and then we work out a way to work with you and support you through various different funding mechanisms to get your idea from the lab, or even sometimes before the lab. It might only just be a concept or an idea. Yeah. Using our staff and using the knowledge and centuries of experience that our staff have got in commercializing products and processes and technologies, and get that to a scale where you can actually then take it to market and test your product in the marketplace. And it's everything. We do it from food, we do it with medicine, we do it with electronics, we do it with detergents and washing up liquids, we do it with chocolate, we do it with different medical professionals, we do it with wearables and things like the trackers and diabetes trackers and blood lactate trackers and all sorts of different bits and pieces. So we have quite a broad spectrum within the process industries that we support in CPI. We're about 600 staff with about £200 million worth of assets actually being installed that you can access. So imagine just the resources that's available to you with £200 million worth of kit on the ground and 600 staff who know how to use it. That's the kind of resource that's available.
Kris, can I just congratulate you? That's one of the best intros I've ever had. And I was just looking at the stuff that I've got printed up on and the thought of me actually having to present it and try to go toe to toe with you, I don't think we're going to, because Claire, he's really good. Oh, Kris, isn't he? He puts it over really well.
Yeah, he did. Kris did put it over really well. I mean, in summary, our role is to take a great idea and help to turn it into a reality. So we sit in between kind of research and invention and the commercial market, and we're all around kind of translating ideas and helping an idea to become a reality.
Excellent. And that's why we wanted to get Kris and Claire on today, because we wanted to get a bit more of an understanding as to this whole link between industry, academia, and also food and innovation. Because if there's one thing that we've learned over the last couple of years, is that we need to innovate, we need to collaborate, we need to keep striving forward, because it is the future. And if you want to be in the future, you've got to be part of the future. But let's introduce our two guests here today correctly. So we've got Clare Trippett, who's the Chief Technologist for Biologicals for CPI, and we've got Kris Wadrop, General Manager for Commercial Operations. Claire, just we always have a really eclectic mix over and above people from the trade dialing in, and everyone's really interested as to people's background. Claire, how did you become involved with CPI? What's your background, please?
So my background is a mixture of microbiology, biotechnology, and bioprocessing. So I've worked in the industry for around like over 15 years now, in all sorts of things, kind of biopharmaceuticals, some agri-tech companies. And yeah, I joined CPI around 8 years ago, and I look after a couple of strategic areas for the company.
Yeah, I'm always so impressed with people like yourself. I was saying to Kris in the green room that my father was a doctor of biochemistry, and I remember on one of my placement weeks when I was at Comprehensive, going to my father's lab and just not having an understanding. The genetic gene pool, intelligence-wise, missed me. Hopefully my kids have got it. But I think people who've got your ability, your intellectual ability to be able to understand the science, but also to translate it to Luddites like me, to the sector, to also to create the benefit for one and all is very impressive. Is it a sector, is it a career, Claire, that you would recommend to our younger generation, or even those mature individuals who are looking to retrain? What do you think?
Oh, I would absolutely recommend it. It's such an interesting field. There's so much to learn all the time, and it's really like where I work at CPI, it's kind of really rewarding as well, because you're helping companies to grow. So fantastic. And
so if there was a younger individual just doing their A levels, or perhaps doing an apprenticeship, if they wanted to get into this area to shadow you in some respects, what do you think? Where should they be going? The university route, the apprenticeship route? What would your advice be, please?
I think you could go either way. I mean, I went the kind of the classic university route, but apprenticeship route as well is. My apologies. I'm just going to.
No, don't worry. We love the Jeopardy. You carry on. If anything, we'll answer the emails for you live. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, either route is good, but I would recommend kind of, as you say, getting some shadowing if possible, getting some hands-on experience.
Yeah, there's one thing again that we've learned over the broadcast, Claire and Kris, is mentorship. I don't know about you, Kris, but I didn't have many mentors when I was going through my career. But there's this real lovely weight of charitability I see from senior people that are really keen to engage with younger individuals who do seem to be a lot more competent than I was at their age, but just to give them a steer, to point them in the right direction career-wise. Kris, have you seen that as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do both internal and external mentorship within CPI, and it's something that we actively promote. So I'm a chemical engineer by training, so I'm a member of the Institute of Chemical Engineers, and I mentor people through that career path and get guys, basically, Claire mentioned the apprentices. When you graduate as a chemical engineer, you've just proved you can learn the maths and you have some understanding of the physics. You then are basically starting your apprenticeship as a chemical engineer and have to go through a 4 or 5 year journey proving you can do stuff in the real world to actually become chartered. And the people like myself get put in place as mentors for the people on that chartership journey. And we do that with both people internally and externally to CPI. But we also have quite an extensive mentorship program within CPI.
Excellent.
For the other functions. So we have a lot of apprentices. We must have 30 or 40 apprentices in that 600 staff across the whole of CPI, covering a broad array of functions, whether it's administration through to microbiology or chemical engineers. So we have, a broad apprenticeship program that we support, and within CPI, even the young professionals that are already graduates can get appointed mentors. And then I know there are a number of people that take mentorship roles on as part of our STEM outreach within CPI. Yeah. So when Claire mentioned that there's a whole plethora of things that can be going on, CPI sees its social responsibility and the spreading of what we do and the impact that we deliver in the world as an organization that has a purpose, both to spread science and engineering, but also deliver sort of health to the planet and health to people in terms of what we do and what we deliver for our customers.
And that's so impressive. I do get frustrated sometimes with the agriculture and the fresh food sectors in comparison to say the engineering sectors who are very well geared, bossed at growing their own and bringing those individuals. There's this ongoing problem within ag and food that because it's so fast paced, it's really difficult for some companies to set aside budgets even to allow that training. But if you look at the likes of CPI, if we can learn from you, and that number of apprentices that you've got within the business is deeply impressive. And you will, both of you will have seen that standard graph from the likes of Cranfield University showing that the companies that put investment into their staff in the way of training development see better ongoing increased turnover and increased profitability, but there's still some people who don't see the benefit of that because it's not producing the results today or tomorrow. And yes, it is a long-term thing, but again, just majoring on it, the fact that you've got 30 plus apprenticeships you're basically growing your own. You're planting that seed for the future, aren't you? And also with the issue of staff recruitment that we're all suffering across the board, if you can grow your own for the future, you're gonna make yourself future-proof. Do you think, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in science, it's really important to have that kind of pipeline of skills and talent coming through all the time. And CPI we're really keen to see how we can support that as well. Really creating the workforce of the future is absolutely a priority.
Well done, Claire. I think you've stolen the line of the broadcast, creating the workforce of the future. Well done. So just segueing to that, and thank you. I didn't mean us to go down that route, but again, it's really interesting to find out how you're constructed internally, because again, it's another reason why we need to be aligned to you, because we know you're going to be here for the long term, because the type of people that you've got and the type of training that you're doing internally. But let's look externally. How do you just support industry and academia with food innovation? And guys, just a segue on that, I always come up with this same phrase, and we did it on a recent broadcast that we host for a great group called Women in Food and Farming, and we had a lovely lady from a concern called NIAB, who do a lot of plant and seed research, and we were sort of having an argument about, in Holland they have a thing called the Dutch diamond, where there's a very strong link between government, education and trade. And it's a lovely virtuous signal system set up so that everyone benefits, that government will support, education has that funding, and they support industry, and industry supports the academia and the government. We don't tend to see that too much, he says, in our slightly fractured government system at the moment. Let's park that one. But again, that's the conversation that was had on this recent broadcast was, well, don't worry about the government. We need institutions or organizations who can actually drive things further forward and just push any roadblocks ahead. And I get the feeling that CPI is that. So just how does CPI support industry and academia with food innovation? Kris, you go first.
It's evolving is the best way of putting it. So if you look at what CPI does and the kind of ecosystems that we live within, we've worked, we have two major sources of income into CPI. Whilst we're a kind of social enterprise with a purpose, we do have to generate a profit, and we reinvest that back into the company for training of our staff and new capabilities and advances. But what we do is we either work on publicly funded grants and projects where we collaborate with industry, or we work directly with industry, usually on a one-to-one style arrangement. Yeah. What we're trying to do, because of the time and energy it takes and the uncertainty in landing public money in the form of grants, is kind of replicate that collaborative model in the commercial space, where we identify sort of challenges and problems within specific industries or within specific sectors and markets, and work out who shares that problem. And rather than each of them trying to do it and fix it individually, yes, they can share the cost and the price. But likewise, CPI doesn't have all of the answers. But what we've found over the last 15, 20 years is we're fantastic at convening all the different organizations like ourselves. So it's simplistically and a bit glibly, come and talk to CPI. We don't have all the answers and we can't do everything, but we've usually got a mate who has or who can. And we will bring that together, because one of the biggest things that industry has, one of the biggest challenges industry and academia have, is often they don't know who to talk to, and they don't have time to talk to an entire landscape of small, medium enterprises, other research and technology organizations, or other academics to understand who is doing what. Yet organizations like CPI and CPI specifically takes that as part of our remit and our role, raison d'etre and role to be here, to understand what's going on in the landscape so we can connect the dots, because it's connecting the dots that makes us powerful, and it makes the whole equal to more than the sum of the parts.
Well done, Kris. And Claire, I don't know if you find the same thing. I find a lot of senior level commercial leaders are actually sort of commercially lonely. They're at such a pinnacle in their organization and their career. It's really difficult to get information. And the internet, especially in our trade, is just so awash with so much content. And it's really difficult to get established. So what Kris was saying about that within your network, if you don't have the answer, you may have the answer. To me, Claire, that resonates. And Claire, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Kris has said, one of the things that we can help with at CPI is connecting it's connecting industry, it's connecting like what's going on in the universities, what's going on with government, and bringing all those parties together. So like often companies working in the sector, they'll need access to kind of funding, so we can help with that. And they'll need someone to talk to help guide them in the right direction. Like if we're developing a manufacturing process for them, they might need advice on how to scale that up. So we can help with all those things and help sift down to kind of get to the important information as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and help me here, and feel free to slap me down if I'm using the wrong terminology. Is CPI a bit like a broker? So if an individual or a company's got an issue, say that they've got a food innovation element that they're struggling on, would they come to you and you would look to broker out the solution, and would you potentially have the resources internally within CPI to create that solution, but you might bring in collaborative partners? Claire, how would it work, please?
No, absolutely. I'd say we're like a facilitator, really. A company can come to us and we'll help to facilitate connecting with other partners where it's needed. But like you say, we've got access to the facilities and expertise in-house as well to support projects across a whole range of kind of food and feed projects. So it's definitely, as you said.
Yep, and Kris, are you seeing that this collaboration with the likes of universities, is that starting to gather more momentum? Because we're picking up that universities are keen to assist external industry to gain an additional income, but also they've got this amazing resource of all of these very high caliber students, whether they be degree or PhD level, that are really keen to get involved. So are you seeing more collaboration with universities, Kris?
Where we tend to collaborate with universities is at the point at which they're spinning things out. So they're involved a lot in various networks that we work together in consulting and understanding what's going on. Quite often we can go to some universities with specific challenges or problems and utilize some of their infrastructure and some of their skill sets and knowledge. We collaborate on some larger grants potentially with universities. But these could be more Horizon Europe style projects. It's difficult for us to collaborate directly with universities in the UK on public grants just because we tend to eat from the same pie within the grant, and you need industry engagement in there. So what we tend to do is support the spin outs from those universities. And we have a part of CPI called CPI Enterprise, which actually sits in the venture capital space. And it's the bridge between SMEs and small companies, and it can enable them through its network of several hundred venture capital firms to introduce the right firms that are looking for the right kind of investments that we see with the SMEs. So not only are we helping the companies do their technical development and technical due diligence, we can help them in the marketplace to access various different kinds of funding as well.
Yeah, so I love that. It's almost like universities stick to the knitting, you stick to what you're good at, and then deploy the professionals like yourselves when they've got a product and element to spin out.
It's different people and different experiences ask different questions at the different points of the scale up.
Yeah,
and you need levels of experience and knowledge and things to get you. I wouldn't go into a blue sky research program because that's not how I think. I tend to start with how do I make 1,000 tons of something and work backwards to the laboratory, not the other way out. So it's you come at it with your experiences and your knowledge, and what you really want to do is avoid repeating mistakes. So you want people that have done the same thing, albeit in slightly different contexts, a dozen times before, because you'll get to the answer faster. And anyone that, whether you're on a farm or whether you're in coming out of the universities or you're in a company or you're a large corporate, small organization, the reality is the amount of money you spend to get your product to market dictates the return on that investment and the amount of risk that you've got. So what you need to do is get to market as quickly as possible for the least amount of money invested as possible, because it is that time to market that's critical. because first mover advantage and everything else. So getting the right people involved at the right time, whether that's academia at the lower. Are you familiar with the term technology readiness levels? Have you ever heard of that one? University is fantastic in TRLs 1 through 3, 1 through 4. And like CPI kick in really between TRLs 3 through 8. And we overlap, and then we do what we do best.
I wish there were some sectors that are engaged with yourselves previously, the likes of vertical farming, which is a conversation for another day, but there's so many duplicated businesses all doing the same thing, trying to learn the new technology, so much money going into it and so much money being burnt. But as I said, that's a conversation for another day. It's just one of my pet hobbies at the moment. So cellular agricultural innovations. We were talking in the green room about this, and I held you back from both of you giving me some defined answers on this, but we're really interested to find out more about the agricultural innovation side on this cellular level. So Claire, if it's okay to ask, what is this and how does it operate? Why should we care? And I suppose also with everything going on about the environment and the respect of sustainability, regenerative agriculture, carbon neutrality, why is this going to be important for the environment? Claire, I've given you lots of questions. Shall we just go for the big one? Cellular agricultural innovations. Talk us through that, please, Claire.
Okay, sure. Yeah, cellular agriculture is it's a new and really exciting area of science. And what it does is allows us to create animal products through a different route from raising livestock. So we're creating animal products using fermentation and cell culture instead of through raising animals. So I guess we're effectively kind of farming cells instead of animals. And the idea is that we make these products that are identical to as if they'd come from an animal. So obviously there's lots of kind of imitation products on the market and they're fantastic, but there's the potential that we could make something that's identical. So in theory, it may be more desirable. It might have the same kind of taste, the same smell, the same mouthfeel. It might kind of cook the same. So I guess one of the more well-known parts of cellular agriculture is kind of cultured meat or cultivated meat. And a lot of the time when people hear that word, cultured meat, they might recoil in horror and think it sounds really, really scary. But cultured meat it's genuine animal meat that should be identical to conventional meat. And it's grown through cell culture. And the idea of cultured meat actually isn't that new. So Winston Churchill actually predicted it as far back as 1931. There's quite do that. Yeah, I know. There's this quite famous quote where it was something along the lines of escaping the absurdity of growing a whole chicken to eat the breast or wing, by growing bits of chicken in a suitable media. And a couple of decades ago, back in the noughties, there was some research done on cultured meat to see if it might be suitable, something that we could, use in space travel, so astronauts could the meat to have on their way to Mars. So it's been around for a while, the concept, but it's kind of more recently in maybe the past kind of 10 years that we've really started to progress this area. The first cultured meat burger was developed and it was cooked and tasted on live TV, and it was really expensive. It was over $300,000 to create this burger. But now the sector has really grown, and there's dozens of companies in this space and loads of investment. And just a couple of years ago, the first ever cultured meat product was actually kind of served in a restaurant that was in Singapore, where the first regulatory approval was, and that was chicken nuggets. So cultured chicken in Singapore in 2020, and it was a massive landmark for the industry. So it's quite to make cultured meat. Sorry, Max, did you want to say something?
No. Okay, carry on.
Oh, yeah. So to make cultured meat, you have to take a sample of cells from an animal in the first place, but you can do this through kind of a harmless biopsy. So if we wanted to grow beef, we need some cells from a cow. If we wanted to grow pork, some cells from a pig, like a chicken, some cells from a chicken. But then you can take these cells and create what we call a cell bank. So you wouldn't have to keep going back to the animal. And then you grow the cells up in what we call a bioreactor, which is something similar to what we would make beer in, kind of a big metal bioreactor, and then you feed it with growth media, which has got all the vitamins and nutrients and everything that a cell needs to grow and survive, and then you can harvest that and use it as a food ingredient.
And Claire, where I'm fascinated in this area, was it 2 weeks ago? We went to a UK farming event called Groundswell, and it's a relatively new event, and it's all about regenerative agriculture and sustainability. And they have a number of key speakers there, and they had Mr. Dimbleby there of the National Food Strategy. And he was just giving his synopsis of the white paper that was sort of coming through government as to his recommendations on the back of the National Food Strategy. There must have been 500 people in this circus tent. And he showed a slide that I've never seen before, which is basically it was a Venn diagram, and it was the weight of all the people in the world and the weight of all the animals in the world. And if I knew we were going down this way, I would have grabbed the graph because we videoed it, but off the top of my head, it was something in the region of there's 8 times more weight of animals in the whole world sitting on the planet than there are of actual humans, and just the environmental costs of that is obviously significant. And he was stated within the National Food Strategy that within the UK we need to do something. That yes, there's land that is ripe for animal production, but if there were workarounds to still provide this protein, but without the environmental impact, because it's just getting bigger and bigger. So Claire, that resonates. That brings to the technology that you're involved with. Claire, direct question. Do you think it's? I'll just ask it. Do you think it's a gimmick, or is it going to be here for the long term? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down. Do you think we're going to be seeing more cellular agriculture on products on our shelves rather than traditional livestock rear product? What do you think?
I do. I absolutely do. I think I don't think with cellular agriculture it's aiming to displace meat entirely. I think there's room for the two to coexist alongside each other, but there's some really, most of us love to eat animal products, and like I love chips on toast, but there's some really compelling reasons why we want to look at alternative methods of using to producing these. Like you said, there's like food security. So the population of the earth is projected to be, what is it now? It's almost 10 billion by the year 2050. So there's like an extra billion people. Like how can we feed all these? How can we feed the extra billion people in a way that's like sustainable and not causing any more damage to the earth, but that's also like safe and like it tastes good as well? There's like the whole efficient, like part of the problem is the efficiency with using animals for food. So animal agriculture is really inefficient way of producing food for us to eat. Like as an example, if you take a chicken, like a chicken is one of the most optimized systems in terms of livestock for producing meat. That chicken has to eat 9 calories of food to produce 1 calorie of food for us to eat, because obviously the chicken needs calories to do its own thing and to exist. So it's quite and then if you look at something like a cow, that's even worse. Like a cow,
totally.
It's like 20 to 1 or something. So the cow would have to eat like 20 kilograms of grain to make 1 kilogram of beef. And then you've got all the knock-on effects. So there's all the kind of land and water and transport associated with raising those animals. And then the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So it's, I mean, if you look at the data, like the published figures, it's thought that it's between kind of 14 and 18% of all of global greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock, which is it's a staggering amount. I could go on and on. Deforestation.
Totally, and it's within the UK. I think we've got the animal production systems relatively well set up, and especially the high care nature. I worry about the likes of the feedlots in some parts of America, because it's just on a factory scale operation. So for this to be a possible solution and environmentally for it to be of benefit on a global basis, it's really exciting. And what about precision fermentation, Claire? Can you see that segueing a lot alongside cellular agriculture? Is this another technology that's keeping pace?
Yeah, absolutely. Precision fermentation is actually like a type of cellular agriculture. So precision fermentation is using microbes really as factories to produce animal proteins. So it's through a method that's really well known in the biotech industry as recombinant protein expression, which is not like the catchiest term ever, but this is what we know it as in the biotech industry. And it's been used for decades. It's really safe. It's been used for decades in the food industry. Like, for example, making rennet. So we used to get rennet from like the lining of calf stomachs, which is not not kind of a sustainable way to produce it, but now we produce recombinant rennet. Like insulin as well, that's another example. So when you look at animal, if you look at like eggs, it's got the albumin protein. If you look at cheese, it's whey and casein proteins, and you can take like the gene, the genetic code for those proteins, put it in a microorganism, something like a yeast, and because all cells will read that genetic code in the same way, so whether that gene is sitting in a cow producing kind of cheese proteins, or whether it's sitting in a yeast cell, you will end up with the same product. So you'll end up with an identical protein that can be used as an ingredient.
So again, the future is very bright for this area of technology, be it cellular agriculture or precision fermentation. So that's got to be a benefit to the consumer, Claire. It's got to be a benefit to us all environmentally.
Yeah, I think so. Like the predictions are that the environmental footprint for these technologies would be much lower than as if those same products were produced through animals. There's also benefits for humans as well with cultured meat and with precision fermentation. You get a really like safe, highly purified kind of product. It's much less expensive as well. Well, I guess cultured meat is maybe not less expensive at the moment, but some of the precision fermentation products are things in it. So
Claire, Kris, I just always remember that great quote from I won't mention because it's probably Terry Wogan. If you remember when he was on the radio, he used to have some great anecdotes, and I'm just thinking about a war's advice not to eat red meat and so on and so forth. And there was a daughter who'd rung in to say that her 92-year-old father had been recommended by the doctor to stop smoking, stop eating red meat, and stop drinking red wine. And so the daughter said to the father, "So what have you done, father?" And father said, "I've changed my doctor." great way rounded. But we've also just this term I've been using a lot about driving societal change. I think there's it's a conversation for another time, but we are sort of caught in this food mechanism where it's all about high fat, high sugar. And do we expect the consumer to change overnight, or do we have to positively influence them, like the ban on tobacco, like seatbelts, and if we can show them other methods to being healthy, that's going to be good for them and be less of a burden on the healthcare systems. And just on that side, team, what about alternative proteins? So we picked up that there's a possibility of like using CO2 to create protein for food. Kris, is this a thing? Is this something we can also get excited about?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to 1960 odd, when NASA was going to put someone in space and they were thinking about how to feed it, Claire's already touched on it. And they postulated it about cellular agriculture. It was actually what they were doing in the 1960s to look at how to feed astronauts up in space. If you think about if you're on a vehicle, if you're in a submarine or you're in a spaceship, what have you got? You've got a bit of water, you've got some CO2, and you've probably got loads of power. If you put those three things together with the right microbe, you can actually generate proteins with the right chain lengths and the right compositions that are appropriate. Now, whether they're appetizing or not, it's a different matter, but they've got the right nutritional value for what humans need to consume. As a consequence of that, there are now several companies around the world looking at growing microbes using a range of different feedstocks. So we can use CO2. That has to be used in conjunction with hydrogen. You can use methane, or you can use things like sugar and methanol to actually just grow bacteria in fermenters, so fermentation, to produce thousands of tons effectively of product that can be used to substitute protein in our diets. So if you're having a shop-bought lasagna or a shop-bought sausage roll or other things like this, you wouldn't notice that the protein content had been exchanged. So instead of it being a meat-derived protein, it was an alternative protein from a microbe. As long as the texture was the same, the taste was the same, we wouldn't notice. And there's companies out there already doing it. One of the biggest products that's been in the supermarkets for decades is corn. You can find that in any supermarket in the world. That is an alternative protein. It's an alternative protein that was isolated and has been produced here on Teesside, in fact, since the mid-1980s. And it's in sausages, it's in cooked ham, it's in mince. There's a wide range of products that you can get in any supermarket that are manufactured from corn. but there are other companies now around the world developing other bacteria, and these are naturally occurring bacteria that if you put them in the right environment with the right nutrients, you get to grow them, you harvest them, and they've got protein contents that are comparable to what we would eat and utilize from meat. And it's not just what we would have for food, they're also being used as animal feed. So one of CPI's customers that's a fantastic success story came to us in 2015 with a challenge. They wanted to do this scale up. They were in a small laboratory in the west coast of America, and they had a vision of being able to feed and support the aquaculture industry. So a large aquaculture farming industry where there are some unsustainable practices using soya meal or fish meal to feed the aquaculture harvest of fish, salmon and the like. And they're using methane to grow bacteria which can be formulated and displace soya of fish meal in farming salmon in Scotland and these things. So we've worked with this company for the last 6 years and delighted that they're in the process of constructing their first commercial plant. And that's going through commissioning now. So we've gone from producing kilos of product in the lab with them to them constructing a plant that will produce 20,000 tons. Yeah, that is a commercially viable scale of production.
And if you think the average supermarket has 35,000 different lines of product, the volume just in the UK alone of feeding 72 million people, the volume of commodity product that has to go into creating that end product, and that's just the UK. Just jumping around little old Ghana and West Africa is 22 million people. Just when you actually stop and think about it, Claire, Kris, the amount of volume of product going in. So with your expertise and your technology, if you could just influence one sector, such as that example that you give, the sort of the butterfly effect is monumental. Be huge, Kris.
It is. I mean, just to put it into context, carbon dioxide, everyone's emission. It's difficult to put it into context, but people are aware of climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide. Just to put it into context, we're shifting from using combustion engines to electric cars by 2030, 2035, and we're moving that out of the way. 8 sirloin steaks, typical steak that you'll get will be an 8-ounce steak. Sirloin steak's about 50% protein. So if I take 8 sirloin steaks, I've got about 1 kilogram of protein from beef cattle. Yep. The amount of meat that is being produced there is the equivalent to driving over 1,000 miles in your average family car. Wow. So the carbon dioxide emissions from 8 sirloin steaks, which is basically you and your 7 mates going out on a weekend, or if you and I both took our families out, we'd do 1.5 times that in terms of sirloin steaks. It's the equivalent of driving over 1,000 miles, yet we're banning the use of, we're slowly eliminating the use of petrol engines and diesel engines in vehicles. But that's a fraction of a cow. Yeah. In terms of 8 sirloin steaks, a small fraction of a cow. Yeah. So you can see the kind of carbon emissions that are associated with the agricultural sector. So if you can start nibbling away at that in terms of some of the lower value applications and reduce some of that burden that is within the agri-food sector right now, then you can start to move the needle in societal behaviour. And like I say, in things like lasagnas and hot pots and all these other kinds of formulated products that come to us complete, you're not looking for a nice juicy robust sirloin steak. So that's where alternative proteins can really kick in and make a difference in the food sector.
So it is the future. It feels like it's evolution, not revolution, because there'll be some people I know that will be a bit I'll just say it, frightened about this change. But then again, Claire, you mentioned the likes of penicillin. You look how that was come about. This just feels like a natural evolution again. That's why we need the expertise from yourself, from CPI, from your colleagues to take us to this next stage, because we've all got to create, Kris, you're stealing my phrase now, we've all got to create this societal change, especially on an environmental basis by adopting this technology. And within 5-10 years, it's not going to be seen as technology. It's just going to be seen as the norm, isn't it? Like a number of products are today. We just got to get to that next stage. And Kris, I love your example of the likes of the electric car. It is just the process that we're going down. So you're both confident, Clare. You're confident that we will see this positive wholesale change through the likes of CPI on a benefit to the consumer, but also perhaps more importantly environmentally. So Clare, you're confident?
I'm very confident we'll see this change. I think we're already seeing it now. I think we're seeing a shift in how people are approaching the way they eat these products. I mean, there's a huge increase in veganism. We're seeing more and more kind of alternative protein and like plant-based products in the shops to buy. So I definitely think there's a shift in consumerism, and I think that technology is getting more and more sophisticated all the time. If we can offer a piece of meat that is identical to as if it comes from an animal, but it has been produced in a different way, a much lower kind of environmental footprint way, I mean, I know which one I would choose, but I think it's just giving people that choice.
But again, it's interesting. Just a slight segue. We're picking up that the likes of the conventional arable cropping within the UK of, say, milling wheat, there's more. We're eating less and less bread, and so there isn't that requirement for that product. And especially with perhaps the demise of conventional livestock rearing, that farmers may actually be supported, encouraged to grow different crops for different market needs. Again, it's this evolution, not revolution. And just on the sustainability bit, plant and animal microbiomes, how can we harness those? Teach me, how can we harness those in respect of food sustainability? Clare? Oh, everyone, we always have this, Kris, we knew it was going to happen. We were going to have that jeopardy. So we just lost Clare. Clare coming back in as we get another 50p in the meter her end. Kris, what's your view on that element about food sustainability?
Microbiome is quite a new concept, and we all have microbiome. We have microbiome in our stomach. It's what helps us digest our food. We have a microbiome in our mouths. We have a microbiome in our hands. It's just how we live symbiotically with the flora and fauna that's in the environment everywhere, the microbes that we can't see. We cannot live without microbes. They operate complementary to us. We get ill when the wrong microbe gets in the wrong place, or the right microbe gets in the wrong place. So if you get a cut in your hand and it gets infected, it's just your skin microbiome's got in your hand, and it shouldn't be inside your skin. Every plant, every animal, and as I said, ourselves carry a microbiome. So one of the things that's happening, and it is coming through now with food and feed, is how these microbes can be used to supplement and complement what's in our tummies. So you'll have all heard about prebiotics and probiotics and the supplements that you can take, and using, taking fiber in your diet, because the fiber is good carbohydrate that feeds the microbiome versus, simple sugars, which feed the nasty bugs, that promotes the nasty bugs to grow, those kinds of things. Well, when you actually go out on a farm, every plant has its own microbiome as well, around its leaves, around its roots. And what you're able to do is actually use bacteria in an enhanced way to promote the natural microbiome around the plant, to displace things like fertilizers and pesticides. So you can actually use a biostimulant that's you coat the seed, plant the seed grows, the microbiome that you put on the seed grows with the plant, and then all of a sudden the plant has an enhanced ability to fix nitrogen from the soil or fix nitrogen from the air, and needs less pesticides and needs less fertilizer to enable it to grow to the target yield or beyond the yield, just by using nature's remedies in a more concentrated way. And there's a number of organizations out there that have started to do that, and we work with CHARP and a number of the agricultural institutes in the UK, looking at what companies are out there, what organisms are out there that can support the UK crops and the UK harvest to actually start displacing that. And it's even more important in the way that the world's going at the minute, with the way the gas price has gone. The price of fertilizer is directly linked to the price of natural gas. The price of your food is directly linked to the price of natural gas, or the fertilizer. So we're seeing escalation in prices of food as a consequence of the fertilizer that's having to go on there, the cost of the fuel to get it from farm to the supermarket, and so on and so forth. If we can find ways to detach our food system from crude oil or fossil fuel, we enhance not only the sustainability and reduce the carbon emissions, but we start to give ourselves some food security and some pricing security moving forward. And we do that through the evolution of these technologies, which, let's be honest, is just what nature does anyway. We're just understanding it a bit better and then promoting it and enhancing what nature does.
Evolution again.
The trick is to complement nature, not fight it.
Kris, you're making me smile again, because a week ago on the lovely farm estate that I live in Suffolk, we had a farm walk, and they're very kind of, they give us a farm walk every year, and they were explaining to everyone in the village about how the likes of sugar beet, the seed used to be coated in a really nasty mixture of stuff to stop aphids, but the problem was that could potentially hurt buzzy bees. So rightly so, that chemical got banned. But then it didn't give the protection to the plant. So the farm's director was a huge advocate for this type of technology, to the point of they're running a number of trials with companies that need real-time data on the floor, so to speak, because they could see that this is going to be the future. And again, it's interesting, Kris, isn't it? In sort of adversity, people always come up with solutions, isn't it? There's that much used phrase about never waste a crisis. And everything that we've gone through now, and with the likes of particular chemicals being banned, or fertilizer costs going through the roof, we have to find another solution. With this type of technology that you're involved with, it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. Claire, for everyone on the podcast, Claire's back in. We lost to the gremlins of the internet, but she's back. But Claire, I'm afraid Kris gave us a stellar answer on that. If you want to go for it, feel free. We can compare your views on the subject of microbiomes in comparison to Kris.
Okay, sorry, I missed. You must have been discussing about microbiomes. Yeah, no, I'm sure Kris gave a great answer, but I think this is such an interesting area, that we have this whole other kind of world around us that we know as the microbiome, all these different microorganisms, and that we can kind of harness the knowledge about these microorganisms to improve productivity and sustainability. So improve productivity of plants and soil and animals as well, and then our own microbiomes as well. So if we know which microbes are there, if we know what they're doing, then we can kind of hack into this and potentially improve the health of animals. So microorganisms are obviously everywhere. They're the most kind of abundant and longest evolving form of life on the earth, and everything else has kind of co-evolved with microorganisms. Plants and so if we look at kind of crop improvement in particular, so plants and microbes, they've often got a mutually kind of beneficial relationship. So we call this symbiotic, and we can work with the microbes that live in the soil around a plant and on the plant and in the plant to kind of enhance the function of the plant. Maybe improve productivity, like give the plant extra functions, or it might be more tolerant to kind of drought, or more tolerant to kind of high salt concentrations. So we can give the plant kind of an extra boost through probiotics. With animal health as well, like kind of animals carry specialized microbiomes. If we do, like for example, cows, we know cows are some of the worst offenders when it comes to methane gas, don't we? Like methane gas is like a particularly bad greenhouse gas, but there are people looking at research on how to work with a cow's microbiome so that it produces less methane gas. So there's a lot we can do if we tap into the power of the microbiome around us.
So Claire, Kris, we majored on, I suppose, let me use my unprofessional phrase, the physicality of the likes of cellular agriculture, precision fermentation, alternative proteins. Is there another link here with AI? Because there's a view, going back to my pet subject at the moment of vertical farming, there's a view that the only way that the likes of vertical farming is to have adoption of AI to watch, to register and implement possible issues and the associated solutions in real time. With everything that we've talked about today, is there a place for AI to bolt in along this new technology to assist, or am I being naive? Kris, thoughts, please.
No, I mean, AI slash what I'd just call digital in a typical journey from test tube to market for a biotechnology product is 12 to 15 years. And that's been proven repeatedly over the last decades. Through the digital tools that are now available and the ability to do predictive modeling and enable you to skip forward in some of the TRL stages that would normally require months or years of investment, you're able to utilize digital tools to actually bring that timeline down from 12 to 15 years to somewhere near 3 to 6.
Wow.
And the impact that it can have of actually mirroring digital against real world, and you validating constantly against a digital model with a single or a small handful of real world experiments instead of a really comprehensive matrix, enables you to be quite predictive and accelerate that journey, which means you can have much more impact in the market much faster. And of course, once the models are established, you can utilize them for you can ask them multiple different questions rather than just if I'm doing one set of experiments to achieve one outcome, that's great. But once I've achieved that outcome, you can't just make that analogous to another question or another completely different strain. Whereas the models can be developed such that they can interpret, and you can also get the models to start predicting what products you want, what protein profiles you want, or what formulation characteristic you want, and come back to designing the actual molecule that you can then get out of a microbe where you can go and look for. So yeah, the flexibility it gives will enable us to do that innovation journey much quicker, which will see impact in the marketplace far faster and more cheaply achieved than it has been in the past.
And do you think that 10 to 15 year growth stage coming now down to say 6 or 8? Can you see that accelerating even further as AI, as data computation accelerates? Can you see it accelerating?
Not for what we're talking about, because you've got to remember a big part of that is designing the kind of equipment and facility, and you've got to, it takes a certain time to design a bit of steel, procure a bit of steel, dig the hole in the ground, pour the concrete, and put it in place. So there are physical limitations. The AI might be able to come up with an answer. But I was always taught never quite to believe, because what computer says isn't always right. Without sometimes the intelligence of the question that you've asked the computer, if you simply accept the answer blindly, will have issues. So you always have to do some validation. You always have to do some testing. You always have to ensure that what it's telling you is accurate. I don't need it to the second decimal place. Sometimes I just need to know where the answer is 110 or 100. To know whether the computer's in the right kind of order. But there is that balance of how fast you can go, because when you're hitting food regulation, food authorities, you have to have sample testing. You have to make some of the material to get it into a recipe somewhere. So there is just a longevity to some of these journeys and how long they may take. Like I say, I think with what we did with Calista, doing it in 6 years, and we use some element of digital in achieving that, and we use modeling and lots of taste panel testing and things, and that company's been very active and been very successful in the cash that they've raised from various investors. They were ambitious and aggressive in terms of they were ready to write checks and commit to doing things, and AI would have only taken a year or two off that if had they had that at the start of that journey, because they had the right attitude and the vision of what they wanted to deliver, and we're very supportive investors to get you through that journey. So there is a balance. Getting from 10 to 15 years down is absolutely possible. Reducing it much below that 4 to 6, I would query, just because of you've got to have the market testing in parallel with the technical evolution.
So got it. But I suppose with the weight of the mitre, the CPI, you can do a number of different projects. So if you've got that time scale of 6 to 8 years, it's not like you're doing one project, you're doing multiple projects. And again, that cross-fertilization across all those projects.
We have 15, 20 projects on at any, between the sort of bio facilities and CPI, we'll have 15 to 20 projects on the go at any one given point in time, because there's over 100 staff working in the bio fields at CPI.
Yeah, I could talk to both of you all day, because I think we've already lifted the lid a little bit of CPI. There's more to find out, but we don't have the time. But we've got to get companies to engage with you to find out more about you and how they can collaborate with you. I love this word collaboration that we've really learned over the last couple of years as we're going through this process that we are all at the moment. To me, it's all about collaboration. So how can companies collaborate with you? What sort of companies would you like to collaborate with you? Claire, you go first. And we've lost Claire again. I love the internet. Go on, Kris. What sort of companies?
To be fair, any company. So we work with 1 and 2 people, mom and pop, kind of micro SMEs, and we work with BASF, Unilevers, Procter and Gamble's. We operate at both. Well, we operate at the end throughout the entire spectrum, and really, it's about the clarity of purpose that those companies have and ensuring that we can support them. And we have a range of different engagement mechanisms that enable us to work effectively with those organizations. Sometimes being able to get funding for their work, or they can pay for it themselves out of their own resources. So we work with, like I say, small SMEs through to large corporates. There is no limit from us. We have different ways of working with each of them. So it's it's quite a mixture. In a typical financial year, we might have 130 customers, 150 customers across the whole of CPI. Yeah. And the bits of work some of those will be multi-million-pound customers, and some of those will come and spend £5,000 or £10,000 to achieve a piece of work. So we really have a broad spectrum of customers that come and work with us, and we work with the very small customers because one day they'll be the big customers.
Yes, well
done. And we might have to work with several of them, but maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 20. CPI's 2 biggest customers were SMEs that we started working and engaging with at very, very small levels of work. And they've engaged with us on multiple CR&Ds, the collaborative research and development, publicly funded or private engagements. And they've worked with us across several of those over multiple years. And, from a relationship perspective, I always tell customers, and in fact, I did it with a customer yesterday, there's 2 ways of really engaging with CPI. You can tell us what to do tactically, and we'll do what we can do if we can, or if we can't, we'll introduce you to someone that can. And that's a tactical kind of engagement. Or we can engage with you strategically, where your company's success and our success, based on the impact that we can help you deliver and everything else, become entwined, and it becomes a multi-year, long-term relationship. And at that point in time, we start thinking about you even when you're not paying for us, because we start thinking about how to build you into other programs, how to build you into other bits of work. If we're creating a new capability, we were ensuring that capability will satisfy what we know you are going to need in a year's time, and so on and so forth. So we can engage really tactically, and that's fine. And we do that with a number of customers. But we also work really strategically with a small handful of customers where we become codependent, and they come and, to some extent, almost come and live with us, and they move into CPI's facilities and work hand in glove with our team. And that's how they get the best out of our team, because all of a sudden that 2-person mom and pop shop suddenly becomes a team of a dozen. And to be absolutely honest, I joined CPI after being their 2nd largest customer for 4 years in my own startup spin out SME. So CPI was my technical department, and I took an office in the corridor opposite the labs. So the lab team used to love me because I just come and knock on the door in the lab and see what was going on. But prior to being with CPI as part of their staff, I was actually, my organization was their 2nd largest customer through 2010, 2014, doing a range of different programs and different works as we took our technology from test tube through to larger scales. So yeah, it's how CPI works best, is that kind of strategic engagement. But we do it with GSK, or we do it with a 1-person idea coming out of a university.
Yeah, Kris, I think you and CPI and your colleagues have to be admired, because I knew that you weren't siloed in your thinking, but you and I will both know big businesses that are just impenetrable to get involved with unless you're over a certain size, and it goes back to the way that you're bringing some of your team members on, with 30 of your team being on set apprenticeships, and that you also look after the smaller businesses, because they could turn into, case in point, two of your largest customers. So and they are the future, aren't they? So again, everyone, I think we've learned so much from Kris, and we've lost Claire. Oh, it's such a shame to the vagaries of the internet. Those on the podcast, it wasn't the fault of Claire, obviously, but I think we got a really good input from Claire as well. But CPI, Kris, you definitely want to watch for the future. Are there any ways that we can find out about you over and above the local the standard social media things? Are there any events that you run or you attend where we can actually find out more, meet you all in person? What would your advice be on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing is looking at the socials or the website at CPI, uk-cpi.co.uk. It's on the link, uk-cpi, whatever it is, .com. But we attend numerous events around the UK. I mean, there's a long list of events that I don't have that we're at. So if you ever see us around, then please just come and have a chat. The trick is not to confuse us with the Confederation of Paper Industry. So if you see those guys at an event, that isn't us as CPI. But there's a range of ways of engaging. Obviously, we've got all the socials, Twitter, LinkedIn, and everything else. And quite often, the trick is just to simply throw a link out. You can. There's a contact us form on the website, and that'll guarantee you a call back just to explain, or have a chat about what it is that you're after. Because we do a lot of engagement through the website on that contact form, just to direct you to the right person in the organisation to take your chat to the next stage and either determine whether we can help or if we've got a friend who can, if we can't. It's the easiest way in the modern world is to do the faceless thing and put a page through on the website. Alternatively, I'm sure I'll be linked in on this, and you can drop me a line, direct message me or hook up with me, and I'll make sure that you get connected to the appropriate member of the team in CPI.
I just had a WhatsApp from someone who's watching on social media who says that CPI are brilliant. They're a real community of businesses. So I don't know if that's again that to me just gives a real indication of you all as a business and your colleagues. So Kris, thank you. We've learned so much today. Claire, thank you. We've learned so much from you as well. So let's all follow CPI. Let's all collaborate. Because it is this evolution that we're going through, not this revolution, and it just feels like CPI are the linchpin in your areas of expertise, and hence why we need to, Kris, figuratively hold hands with yourself and Claire to get to this future spot that we all want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kris, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Max. All the best.
Thank you.